try to send message. There is a pop-up message saying you have been muted. So you can't start a conversation. Maybe because of that.
The setting, because every lecturer also can't write anything.
Oh, okay. So that's why I think a setting someone's set only the
Yeah, maybe the owner setting, the admin for the whole team.
cannot post a message.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, actually this slide I have put in the UKM folio earlier today. If you notice, if you look at your UKM folio, I posted this and I also upload the reference for chapter 13 and 14 because that is the part that I will cover today. Okay, so we have about 88 students now, 87 minus myself. Okay, normally how many students attend? We have 300 something, so I will expect around 200 because we cannot expect 100% attendance. 70-80% attendance is good enough. I will post the share the recorded video after class session so that those who cannot attend the online class can listen to the video session later on. Okay, can we start? Because it's already 5:22. I will stop at 7 actually. Hopefully by 7 we can finish, yeah?
Okay, doctor. Sure.
Okay. So let me put the recording. Oh, someone has already start recording. Okay. So I don't want to disturb that one. Okay, let's begin our class. So I will be responsible to discuss with you all and topics on chapter 13 from the project management reference. Okay, this chapter 13 is actually for progress and performance measurement and project closure from chapter 14. So let's look at the lesson plan. This one is actually discussed with you all from by Dr. Faiz Bukhari. I'm going to close the video so that I have better internet connection. Okay. So there are 8 main topics and we are in the 8th topics where we are in the 10th week 10. Today is 3rd of June. So actually you have had your first test, right? So there will be another test towards the end of the semester. By week 14 we will have another test 2, which is so from myself and Dr. Faiz, your coordinator for the course, will group together to produce actually we combine JKIS material and JKKP so that the topic 2, which is not assessed yet in any test, and the topic that is coming next week. Okay, so we combine, there are 4 topics that will contribute to the second test. And the test is scheduled on the 1st of July, which is approximately 4 weeks from exactly 4 weeks because the test is scheduled on Thursday also. We will use class time for the exam. Okay, same thing as what you did for your test 1 previously. You had the test during the class time, right? Okay, so since I will be covering on topic project implementation and monitoring and closure, so today that is the main issue that we will discuss. So let us recall the cycles, the phases of the project management. Basically, there are 5 main cycles, 5 main sections. The first being the project initiation, then the project planning, project execution, and the last 2, project monitoring and control, and closure. So I will discuss on the project monitoring and control and closure. And in terms of the book, because we are using the project management textbook, edition 5, the reference textbook, chapter 13 and chapter 14 that I put in UKM folio are taken from the same book. So chapter 13 is monitoring the progress, and chapter 14 is project closure. Okay, and okay, so the structure of a project monitoring information system. So the objective is to create a project monitoring system which involves determining what data to collect, how, when, and who will collect the data. This data refers to information regarding the project itself, and then how to analyze the data, how to report the current progress of the management of the project management. Okay, and the information system in the project, in terms of what data are to be collected, it is containing the information regarding the status of the project itself. This will include the scheduling and the cost or the budget used so far. Okay, and then also have remaining costs to complete the project, the date of the each individual task in the project planning. Okay, how much project has been executed, what task to be completed, and then also information regarding potential problems to be addressed, issues acquainted, and then plan, so that these problems to be addressed is important, because you need to cope with the problem so that the project can progress. Okay, it can also have out of control activities that requires intervention, and cost or schedule overruns, and the reasons of its occurrence. Okay, and also can have the forecast of overruns at time of the project completion. So these are all concepts of what are important to be gathered for actually the status of the project lah. Okay, and the information system structure involve collecting the data and collecting the data for analysis, and then for this part, who will collect the project data, who will how to collect the data, when to collect the data, and who will compile and analyze the data. These informations should be known to every team members of the project. Okay, and regarding the reports writing, it must have information regarding who will receive the reports. That means when you write the report, who do you want to send the report to, and who will the reports be transmitted and shared the reports. So when you know who you want to send the report to, so you know the target readers. So if you want to send the report to the general project manager, or maybe the funder for the project, so the way you write, you must gather the information that those people will focus on. So the report content will be depending on who do you want to send the report to. And then you need also to know to be aware of the dates of the report, when you want to submit the report or when you want to distribute the report to. So if the report is like progress report for a certain period of time, so it has to be circulated to everybody in the project team. Okay, and then when you talking about project report, the project progress report format should consist of the following, where you must have progress report since the last report, so that the report should continues from the previous progress report. So it must contain the schedule, the cost, and the scope of the report. Okay, so all these will inform the current status of the project. So it must also have cumulative trends, problems and issues since the last report, because you want to know whether the previous problems, the problems reported in the previous progress report has been addressed or not, and also contains actions and resolutions of the earlier problems. And it can also contains the new variants or problems identified. And it must have also the corrective action plan to do if the same problem arise again. Okay. Then the progress control process, and project control process is actually the process of comparing actual performance against plan to identify deviations, evaluate the causes of action, and take appropriate corrective action. So the project control steps include setting the baseline of the project plan, then measure the progress and the performance, compare the plan against the actual performance of the project up to that time of report written, what is the actual progressing of the project. Then you have the action, taking action, required taking action based on the previous and the current situations. So the tools for control process is required for tracking and baseline Gantt charts. Okay, and also for control the charts, because your progress of the project will be always depending on the Gantt chart, where you want to keep track of what is the status. Is the project at par with the original plan, or is it behind the schedule? If it is ahead of schedule, that's good. But if it is behind, so other causes like budget may be overexpand. So you want to avoid overexpense of project. If it's ahead of time, that's good, as long as the budget that you have planned for the project utilized wisely. Okay, so when you want to look at the baseline tracking, you will have to refer to the Gantt chart. So like here, the slack diagram, I think you have learned this from previous lectures. When we have a Gantt chart, we use certain legends where we always compare, like for example, the bar that is shaded here is the baseline, and then the blue one is actual completion. So you compare the actual completion with the plan. Baseline is the plan Gantt chart, plan schedule. So here, for example, activity A, B, C, D, E, F, you have 6 activities, and some activities overlap. So like for example, activity A is only for the period of 2 months, I think period. The x-axis here represents duration. It can be month. Okay, so here you have 2 months for activity A. Right after finish activity A, you continue activity B and C. Activity B is for 3 months, but activity C is 5 months. Then you move on. After complete activity B, you start with activity D. Okay, but actually, you start activity A. You look at the blue bar. Okay, activity A completed as planned. Activity B also completed as planned. But activity C is a bit shorter duration of completion. So that after you finish the activity C, you can see here activity D and E has begun. But you are now at activity at month 6. This is just an example of current situation. Current, you are taking. Imagine that you are already in the month of the 6 months. So this line 6 here is the today's duration. So by right, from the original plan, activity E should be started, but actual implementation, activity E already begun. So you for this example, it is advantage because you start the activity E early. Okay, so because when you have one activity start early, so you would expect the next activity, in this case is activity F, can start earlier also. You have a projection of all activities. So this is how you track your baseline activities. You can report this in your progress report so that you can have better control of the project implementation. Okay, in terms of project schedule control chart, this control chart is actually a graph of how you see whether the progress of the report is ahead of schedule or behind the schedule, because you always put a 0 line in the middle, and then the reporting period for this example is during the 6th month, and the time period here you just plot. If it is ahead of time, the value should be positive. Behind schedule, the value should be negative. So for example, the previous example, -1 is means 1 month behind schedule. Positive here means ahead of time. So altogether, if it should be fluctuates around the time period 0, so that some activities may be ahead of time, some activities can be behind schedule. So when you have here like few activities already behind schedule, so you have to make other activities ahead of schedule so that it will balance, so that you will not, towards the end of the project, everything will be behind schedule. So the ahead of schedule will compensate the behind schedule, so that towards the end of the project, you will be on time. The project can complete on time. So that's the reason why we want to make sure, we want to see the control chart, so to make sure that the project can be completed within the original time plan. Okay. Now we look at development of an earned value cost or schedule system. So the time phase baseline plan corrects the failure of most monitoring systems to connect a project's actual performance to its schedule and forecast budget. It is actually the systems that measure only cost variance. So the cost variance do not identify resources and project cost problems associated with falling behind or progressing ahead of the schedule. Okay, then we have another parameter, earned value cost. Earned value cost is actually an integrated project management system based on the earned value concept that uses a time phase budget baseline to compare the actual and the planned schedule and cost. So we will have earned value, normally abbreviated as EV. Okay, so there will be glossary terms. EV is actually the earned value for a task, which is actually the percent complete times compared to the original budget. Okay, it stated differently, EV is the percent of the original budget that has been earned by actual work completed. PV stands for the planned value. Okay, the planned time phase baseline of the work schedule. It is actually the approved cost estimate of the resources. Okay, AC is actual cost and the sum of the cost incurred to accomplish the work. Okay, CV stand for cost variance. Cost variance means the variation of the actual cost. You have planned value, so how much it deviates from the planned value, it gives you the cost variance. So CV is actually earned value minus actual cost. And SV, schedule variance. Schedule variance is the difference between the earned value and the baseline line to date, where S value, schedule value is EV minus PV. Whereas BAC is the budget cost at completion. It is actually the total budget cost of the baseline or project cost accounts. Okay. EAC is estimated cost at completion, and ETC is estimated cost to complete remaining work, and VAC the cost variance at completion. So these are all the values based on the budget. Okay, so in terms of I will show you later regarding the relationship between all those parameters. Okay, developing an integrated cost or schedule system. Define the work using the WBS schedule. We have scope, work package, deliverables, organization units, resources, and budgets. For the developed work and resource schedules, schedule resources to activities, and then you have time phase work package into the network. Okay, then we have develop a time phase, budget using work package, so that you will have accumulated budget that contributes to the planned value. At the work package level, you collect the actual cost for the total work performed, actual cost. And then you multiply percent complete times original budget earned value. Then compute the schedule variance, which is SV is equals to EV minus PV. Okay, and the cost variance is the difference between EV and the actual cost. Okay, and then scope of the deliverables, you can always compare the organization and the database, and then you look at the control. You have the plan, schedule, baseline, the time, cost, and the specifications, and these deliverables and the organization of the project implementation. Okay, for the development of project baselines, there are certain rules that you want to pay attention to. The rules for placing the cost in baselines involves the cost that are placed exactly as they are expected to be earned in order to track them to their point of origin. So the percent complete rule is actually the cost that are periodically assigned to a baseline as units of work are completed over the duration of a work package. So in this chapter, actually, there are lots of theoretical concepts where you have maybe many new terminologies that you have never come across. But most of the time, for a project manager, you have to be aware of all those new terminologies lah. Because when you work in for a project as a team, everybody has to have its standard knowledge on the concepts of project management. Okay, and the purpose, okay, when you want to the baseline, purpose of baseline monitoring, plan value, you look at the plan value, okay, an anchor point to measure the performance of the project implementation. So it is actually a planned cost and expected schedule against which actual costs and schedules are measured. It is a basis for cash flows and awarding progress payments. Also, it is a summation of time phase budgets, cost accounts as some work packages along the project timeline. And what costs are included in the baselines? You have to include the labor cost, the equipment cost, materials, project direct overhead cost. DOC is project direct overhead cost. So anything that will incur in the project implementation will be considered as the cost to run the project. So you have to include in the baseline during the baseline plan. Okay. Now, if we want to check on or do analysis of the variance, methods of variance analysis is actually to compare the earned value and based on the baseline plan. Okay, when you do comparison of the earned value, you will always compare with the expected schedule value and also with the actual cost that has spent. Okay, it is actually assessing status of the project, because when you evaluate the earned value, the actual cost, you are actually evaluating whether the project progress is maximize, you can maximize the output, or very slow, or at par with the target or the baseline plan schedules. Okay, so to assess the status of project, you require data elements, you require data budgeted cost of the work schedule, the PV value, the budget cost of the work completed, which is the EV value, and also the information or the data of actual cost of the project completed. Then you need to calculate schedule and the cost variance. A positive variance will indicate a desirable condition, while a negative variance suggests problems or changes that have taken place. Meaning that when you have positive variance, that is what you want to happen. But when you have a negative variance, meaning that there's some problems or some things that not supposed to do has been done. So you will avoid negative variance. You want to have a positive variance, because when you have positive variance, it is advantage. Okay. And then now we look at cost variance, CV. CV is equals to EV minus AC. So this indicates the work, if the work accomplished using labor and material costs more or less than what was planned at any time of the project. The schedule variance is EV minus PV, or the earned value minus the planned value. Is a presentation of the overall assessment in dollar terms or in monetary value of the progress of all work packages in the project schedule up to the current reporting date. Okay, so in terms of cost graph or cost or schedule graph, x-axis is always time. So here we put a timeline, and the y-axis we put a monetary value or the cost itself, and you put
Sorry, doctor, you're muted.
Doctor mute.
oh
No?
the my computer mute itself. Okay, so this graph shows the cost schedule graph, where the cost schedule graph is actually a graph of time in the x-axis. In the y-axis, it is the cost value. So you see here in the y-axis is monetary, and you have you identify the current time or today. Today is the reporting day. So you have here and you compare, and you have BAC, the baseline actual cost, and then you identify the variance, because we want to see if there is variance between baseline and actual time. So the bottom curve here, EV is the earned value below this BAC line, BAC curve. Okay, and here the line is above. Okay, and actual cost is more, and you will have here's SV is the difference between earned value, and you will have negative curve and positive curve. Okay, earned value review exercise. So if you have we can have earned value SV, all these parameters can be negative or positive values. Cost value is the difference between earned value and the actual cost. SV, schedule value, is the difference between earned value and the planned value. Okay, so you can have planned value. This is the planned value in the middle. Okay, this plot shows planned value that is below, whereas this one shows planned value that is above everything. Okay, and here you will see when this one is because SV is EV minus PV, so you will have, if SV, for this one SV is always negative, because EV is smaller than PV. CV is equals to EV minus AC. So here you have CV as positive because EV is always higher than the AC. Okay. This diagram is just to show, to compare the schedule variance, schedule value and cost value. Okay. Assumptions, developing a status report, a hypothetical example. The assumption is that each cost account has only one work package and each cost account will be represented as an activity on the network. The project network early start times will serve as the basis for assigning the baseline value. You can sometimes have certain activity that starts early. Okay, from the moment the work and activity begins, some actual cost will be incurred where each period incur each period until the activity is completed. So that you will have the work WBS and the cost account. You can break down into this project example of a digital camera prototype project from the textbook. So you have individual parts of the digital camera. In order to develop the digital camera, you have individual parts of it, and you do the budgeting for each individual parts. So this will be the breakdown structure for the cost account. And for the digital camera example, you have the project baseline Gantt chart, and you have the slack time and the activities. Activity A until F. Activity A is design. Activity B, shell and power. C is memory software. D, zoom system. E, assemble. And F is test overall system. So the test overall should be in the last 2 months. So this project is about 11 months. Okay. And in terms of its schedule baseline budget, you want to evaluate the plan value and you want to evaluate the slack time is the duration of which the activity is completed and not completed. So you look at the durations of the plan. These are the on the left side is the schedule information, whereas on the right side is the baseline budget needs. Okay, so these are just examples of for that those specific project. Okay, detail of the project for the camera, digital camera, cost variance is CV equals to EV minus AC, or the difference between earned value minus actual cost, whereas schedule value is the earned value minus the planned value. So when you look, you have to do for each task, each activity in the project, then you evaluate the completion of the individual activities or individual tasks. Then you can get the value of all those parameters, EV, DC, and so on. Status report, whether the activity is finished or still ongoing, or how many percentage it has been completed. So you have to identify the percentage of completion of each activities. Okay, then you have from this report you will know the progress is behind schedule or not, or above the schedule. Okay, status report 4, you will see many negative cost variance, 0 and some positive schedule variance. So each activity here you will have activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, 4 and 5. So all those have and you will see, but this report of the individual activity is actually you can only see towards the end of the project lah. Okay, and activity 6, 7 and activity 7 is the last part of the project. So it should be here, activity E and F is not started yet. Okay, so in terms of the cost graph or control cost schedule graph, so you will have the value. You take information from the table, you can plot in the graph, and this will indicate a PV value, the earned value and the actual cost. Okay, and then showing the status through period 7. So the next step, because if you are currently in month number 6, and the next one now is month 7, and you want to see the progressing of the project. How many remaining tasks to be completed? Actual completion is represented by the blue bar, and you will see here some remaining. You expect activity E is delayed and activity F very much delayed. So that means in this project, instead of it's finished at month number 11, it will need to have extra time to complete the project. So you will add this required project time extension. Like for example, now because in this COVID situation, many projects are actually behind schedule because of movement control order. So these are examples of why you can extend the project. Sometimes it's unavoidable, although you plan to complete within certain number of months, but because of actual implementation, there are uncontrolled elements, uncontrolled factors, which cause the project cannot complete on time. Okay, project roll up. So you put a figure, the values of SV and CV for each box here. I think in our cost, we are not going to actually implement the values in terms of actual values, only theoretical values. Okay, so you are expected to know what are the values of SV, CV, PV, AC, all those. What are the meaning of those things? Because for you all, when you are doing your, like for example, academic project that are students' work, we cannot implement all concepts that you learn from project management. So in this course, you learn mostly theoretical aspects of project management. Okay, and then the index to monitor progress of project based on cost performance index, CPI, and then you also need to evaluate scheduling performance index and percent complete index. So there are three parameters, three index for you to monitor the progress of the project. So the cost performance index, CPI, is a measure of the cost effective of work accomplished to date. So CPI is actually the ratio of earned value to the actual cost. Whereas scheduling performance index is the ratio of EV over PV. Index is actually a ratio. Variance is the difference. Previously, we looked at the difference between EV and AC, which gives you cost variance. But performance index is the ratio of earned value to the actual cost, and scheduling performance index, SPI, is the ratio of earned value to the planned value. And the percent completeness of completion, percent of complete index, PCI, you can have two types, PCI budget and PCI based on actual cost. So you have PCI-B for budget based and PCI-C percent complete index based on the cost. So PCI-B is equals to the ratio of earned value to the base total budget baseline actual cost. BAC is based on a budgeted actual cost. And PCI cost, PCIC, is the ratio of actual cost to the value of EAC. Okay. And then the interpretation of those three index. Okay, so we have cost performance index and we have schedule performance index. Okay, cost performance index. The value can be in three category. If the value is equals to 1, because cost performance index and schedule performance index are actually the ratio of two values. So if you have same value, you will get 1. Same number divided by same number, you get 1. So that is on cost, or meaning that in terms of cost performance index, it is on cost lah. But in terms of the scheduling, it is on schedule. But if the index is more than 1, it is under cost for cost performance index. If it is less than 1, it is over cost. So in terms of budget, when you have over cost, it's not good. When you have under cost, better lah, because extra money that you have for the project, you can spend for other additional tasks or activities. In terms of the schedule performance index, SPI, when you have the ratio more than 1, the project is said to be ahead of schedule, so advantage. Whereas if the ratio of for the SPI is less than 1, it means it's behind schedule. So there is a tendency for the project to require more time. So when you require more time, you would expect more budget to be incurred. So it's not good. So as much as possible, you want to have a CPI equals to 1, and also SPI, the schedule performance index, is equals to 1. If you at any time you evaluate the performance index, the value that is not good, so you can always adjust the activities. You plan to complete any task that is behind schedule, or any activities that involves over schedule or over cost, reduce the budget and so on, so that towards the end of the project you will get the project similar to what you planned, no over budget, no over costing, or no behind schedule activities. Okay, here in terms of diagram, the SPI and CPI. So we have x-axis is always the period, a time period, and the y-axis is the index value. Index values is small number, and 1 is the optimum value. So here you can see positive value, and in this example, you have the values, many of it is less than 1. Only few activities, for short duration only, you have a positive index. This is ahead of time, but here when it's negative, behind schedule. Okay, so this is how you monitor the performance, project performance, in terms of its index, the cost index and the schedule index. SPI is schedule performance index, CPI is cost performance index. Okay, and then additional earned value rules. Rules applied to short duration activities and small cost activities. So you have 0-100% rule, or you can have 50-50 rule. So the 0-100% rule assumes 100% of budget credit is earned at once and only when the project is completed. So meaning that you either get the budget for the project, or you get after the completion of the project. The 50-50 rule allows 50% of the value of work package budget to be earned when it is started, and 50% to be earned when the project package is completed. Okay, the percent complete with weighted monitoring gates uses subjective estimated percent complete in combination with the hard tangible monitoring points. Okay, now we want to forecast final project cost. So this is the method to use to revise the estimated future project cost. So we will have EAC, RE, and EACF. EACRE allows experts in the field to change the original baseline durations and costs because new information tells them the original estimates are not accurate. Whereas EACF is actually uses actual cost to date plus an efficiency index to project final cost. So EACF indicates final cost, whereas EACRE indicates original or the baseline value. Okay, the forecasting model, EACF, is the equation for this forecasting model, where EACF is equals to ETC plus actual cost, and EAC is the work remaining divided by the cost performance index, and this is equals to BAC minus EV divided by EV over AC. EV over AC is some values, ratio of earned value. Okay, and these are the meaning of each of the codes. EAC is estimated cost at completion. ETC is estimated cost to complete the remaining work. AC is cumulative of the actual cost of the work, and CPI cumulative cost index to date. And BAC is total budget of the baseline, and EV is the cumulative budget cost of work completed to date. or the earned value. Okay, and so monthly status report, you can present all those PV value, EV value, AC value, schedule value, schedule variance, cost variance. SV and CV is variance. BAC, baseline actual cost. You compare with the actual cost. So these are example of how you want to report status of the variance and the budget. Okay, another example, I just put here, not to worry of all those details. The values are actually taken from the reference text. In terms of the parameters of interest, but no need for you all to worry about all those many numbers. This is just example from the textbook. Okay, now we look at other control issues in maintaining the control of the project, which is the scope creep, the baseline changes, data acquisition costs and problems. Okay, so the original baseline is the curve in the center line. You can elevate the baseline, or you can suppress it. So suppress means you make it below the plan or the baseline cost. So when you suppress it, you have new baseline B, the cost will decrease. If you elevate it, new baseline, cost will increase. So if you have, it depends on the progress of the project. If ahead of time, sometimes you want to slow down. If behind schedule, you want to facilitate the tasks or the activities within the project. Okay, this is another example, conference center Wi-Fi project. This one reports on by monthly, and depending on who. This is actually project control plan, to whom you want to report, who are the responsible person, and what change are required. Okay, that's for chapter 13. We finished chapter 13 in terms of control, project closure, and the last chapter will be on project closure. So project closure involves a lot of reporting. So when talking about project closure, we have to decide on the closure type, whether the closure of the project is normal or project is premature, project is perpetual, or project fail and the project is terminated, or sometimes you can have project change priority. Change priority means the project is on hold. When the need rise, then you continue with the project. The close-out plan, during the close-out plan, you need to ask few questions. What tasks are required to close the project? Who will be responsible for this task? And when will the closure begin and end? And how will the project be delivered? The project closure is actually looking back at the overall project, because later on you will learn from the project closure report, so that you will not repeat the same mistakes. And if the project closure is a good project closure, people will learn from the good project management based on the project closure report. Okay, wrap up closure checklist. When you want to do a project closure report, you must have a checklist. So the checklist includes the delegation of tasks among the team. You look at the team, the vendor and contractors, the customer or users, the equipment and facilities used, and then you evaluate each of those elements. For the team, you want to evaluate whether tasks done by the team members, all schedules are completed. Has the schedule for reducing project staff been developed and accepted? Has the staff, these are the example of questions where you want to ask so that you can report in the project closure that you will present later on. Have the performance reviews for the team members been conducted? Has the staff been offered outplacement service and career counseling activities? Example questions that you can raise. If yes, you just tick yes or no. And then for the vendor or the contractors that involved in the project implementation, have the performance reviews all vendors been conducted? Have the project accounts been finalized and billing closed? So you have to make sure, look into details of those involvement of the vendors and the contractors. In terms of the customers for the project or the users for the project, has the customer signed off on the delivered product? Because sometimes a project is requested by certain customers. You as the project manager will implement the project. But at the end, you want to make sure the customer where you deliver your project take the project as delivered. So you need to have a sign off. Okay, and you need to also know whether the depth of the project review and evaluation interview with the customer being conducted. So this is important to make sure the user or the customer that you deliver the project is satisfied, has satisfied their needs. After all, you do the project based on their request. So you need to make sure to do the project review and evaluation. Okay. Then another question you can raise, have the users been interviewed to assess their satisfaction with the deliverables, with the project team, with the vendors, with the training, support team, maintenance, and everything. So these are important because later on, you might want to, your customer, maybe if the same customer, if the customer is not satisfied with the deliverable of the projects, definitely the customer will not take you as the project manager in the future. So in order for you to make sure your reputation of handling the project is good, so you do properly, you do the project closure nicely. And then in terms of the equipment and facilities, you ask the question of whether the project resources been transferred to the project, to other projects. If the equipment or resources you rent it, so you can always use for other projects. Have the rental or lease equipment agreements been closed out? Has the date for the closure review been set and the stakeholders are notified? So these are the questions that you have to ask, and you include those things inside the closure report. All right. Implementing the project close down. Once you have the project closure report, you need to close down the project. So after you close down the project, officially the project is completed. So getting the deliverable acceptance from the customer, you must make sure the customer accept the project as it is, and shutting down the resources and releasing them to new users. And then you also want to evaluate the team members, evaluate the project manager, evaluate all parties involved in the implementation of the project, and sometimes maybe reassigning the project team members. Okay, and the most important is closing the account, or paying, to make sure all bills are paid, and importantly, the budget are fully utilized. If there is any leftover money that you can maybe allocate for other project. So meaning that if you have extra budget, so it will be advantage. So the account closing is also crucial, very important, besides the report writing. Okay, and last but not least is the delivering the project to the customer itself. Make sure the customer sign off and agree to take the project delivered to them as it is. And the last one is the final report lah. The final report, or the closure report. How do you create the final report? It must contain the executive summary, the review and analysis, recommendations, lessons learned, appendix. Appendix is just a reference information regarding the project itself. The executive summary must contain the project goals, whether it is met or not met, and then it contains information regarding the stakeholder satisfaction, whether the stakeholder is satisfied or not with the project. User reactions to quality of the deliverables, and then the review and analysis, project mission and objectives, achieved or not, what are the missions, what are the objectives, all must be written in the final report. And also the procedures and the systems used must also be included in the report. And importantly, it must also describe the organization resources used throughout the project. For the recommendation part, it must have recommendations on the technical improvements, corrective action plan, and lessons learned. Lessons learned are the facts that you accumulate from meetings, from any issues or anything that is not supposed to happen, it happens, what actions have been done, and then these activities are actually, you need to look back what has happened. So meaning that you do a retrospective analysis. You look back, and then to avoid errors or problems in the future, you keep on having reminders, so that don't do this, so that you do not repeat the same mistakes. Okay, of course, the appendix are critical information, things that is important, you put in the appendix so that people can refer to it later on. So the final report will be a cumulative reports of everything, from the executive summary, like for your academic project, contains methodology and the results. But for general project, you have the review and analysis of work done. Okay, pre-implementation conditions, you need to ask questions like the standards and goals for measuring the performance clear or not, challenging, attainable, lead to positive consequences, are the responsibilities and performance standards known by the team members, are the team rewards adequate, meaning that the project team are paid accordingly. If the team are not satisfied with the payment, the project may not be delivered, may not achieve good, because if people are working in a disappointment, normally the output will not be good output. So it's important to evaluate whether the team members receive the rewards adequately or not. Okay. Management believes teams are important. Sometimes management always think of saving money, saving the budget, despite of satisfaction of the team members in the project. And then you need to also look at the team members, their career path for successful project managers. Is there a career path for them? Does the team have discretionary authority to manage short-term difficulties? Is there high level of trust within the organization culture? So these questions actually will evaluate whether the project has been conducted effectively or not. Are there criteria beyond time, cost, and specifications? So these are always normally discussed during project closure lah, pre-closure meeting. Before producing the final report, you discuss among the team members. Normally the project leader will be leading the project report writing. Okay, sample team evaluation and feedback survey using scalable below. Assess each statement. So you can have a Likert scale. 1 is disagree, 5 totally agree, 3 being the neutral. So you ask the question, survey questionnaire, give to the team members. Team members will evaluate. So based on that, you can have satisfaction among the team members. At least a value of how satisfied are the team members. Okay, project performance evaluation individual. So performance assessment responsibility, functional organization of functional metrics. The individual area manager, may solicit the project manager's opinion of the individual's performance on a specific project. You can have balance matrix, where balance matrix is actually the project manager and the area manager jointly evaluate an individual's performance, so that equally the evaluation of the one's team members' performance is evaluated together, where the project manager and the area manager both evaluate each individual accordingly. Project metrics and project organizations, the project manager is responsible for appraising the individual's performance. If you have project metrics, only the project manager is responsible to evaluate the performance of the team members. Some project implement balance metrics, some project implements project metrics, but some will have a mixture of balance metrics and project metrics. This is how you do performance evaluation for individual staff, individual team members. Okay. Conducting the performance review. These are all indicators before you do the project closure. Okay, individual performance assessment can be done from top to bottom, meaning that the manager conduct the assessment or performance evaluation, sometimes the team members can evaluate. Now, this is called 360 degree feedback. So you evaluate. Everybody is evaluating everybody. Okay, multiple rater appraisal. It is called multiple 300 degrees feedback. Involves soliciting feedback concerning team members' performance from all of the people that their work affects. Project managers, area managers, peers, subordinates, and customers all are involved in the evaluation process. But rarely lah, many companies do not want to implement 360 degree evaluation. But sometimes you will find 360 degree evaluation. Okay, the retrospective is looking back at what happens previously. It's lessons learned and analysis carried out during and shortly after the project life cycle to capture positive and negative for project learning. What worked out and what didn't work out. So these lessons learned are actually important. So for those that negative effect should not be repeated. Positive things that happen should be made as an example, motivate others to do the same in the future. The goals of doing retrospective study is to reuse learned solutions and to stop repetitive mistakes. The retrospective study is not meant to look at people's faults, not trying to find fault, but rather the objective of the retrospective study is to learn from mistake. So you can avoid making mistakes, the same mistake in the future. But sometimes retrospective analysis, people tend to blame each other. Retrospective definition is actually looking back at or dealing with the past events. Barriers to organizational learning. In retrospective study, lacks of post-project time for developing lessons, no post-project direction or support for the teams, lessons become blaming sessions, lessons are not applied in other locations, and organizational culture does not recognize value of learning. These are all the limitations of retrospective, because sometimes when you do retrospective, this one blaming session is normally done. People do not want to take the responsibility of do not accept mistakes by them. They tend to point other people's mistake, but actually what happens most of the time, everybody has their own negativity. So you cannot simply, you have to realize your negative side of yourself. Okay, so the objective of retrospective is always for learning process. Okay, the value of retrospective analysis, making retrospective effective. There are methods to achieve that, is to use an independent facilitator to guide the project team through the analysis project activities. Include a minimum of 3 in-process learning gates during the life cycle of the project. Designate a team member as owner for each point in the retrospective analysis. Develop an easy-to-use learning repository to ensure future utilization of retrospective lessons. And then mandate use of retrospectives as part of the normal process for all projects. So take retrospective analysis as a building or a build up strategies, not for a blaming session. Okay, the characteristics of a closure, because to be objective with the retrospective analysis, it's good to have a facilitator for the session. Otherwise, it will be a never-ending, or it cannot, very difficult to get a conclusion based on the retrospective study. So the characteristic of a good closure facilitator, that facilitator must have no direct involvement or direct interest in the project. So meaning that you appoint someone outside the project team, a neutral person. If you take someone from the within the project team members that involved in the project, there is a tendency the facilitator is biased. Okay, perceived as an impartial and fair. Fair meaning that it's not biased lah, not biased towards anyone. Respect of senior management and other project stakeholders. Normally you appoint the facilitator someone who has high rank. If you appoint a project facilitator somebody that a young person has no experience, people will tend not to respect that facilitator. But sometimes facilitator, another criteria for facilitator, good facilitator, is that someone who can control the situation, control situations like blaming session, so the facilitator can control it. Independent or authority to report audit results. So sometimes you can appoint someone from body that like somebody who is originally, or the person is always doing project analysis, retrospective analysis, who have experience. Okay, perceived as someone who has been perceived as having the best interest of the organization in making decisions. So this is like big boss of an organization, somebody, but it's not involved in the project. And also someone who has broad-based experience in the organization or in an industry related to the project, so that the person, the facilitator knows, have some ideas of what the project is about, and he can handle, he can quickly digest discussions during the retrospective analysis. Okay, then initiating the retrospective review, you must, the person handling it, the facilitator, must have automatic times or points when audits will take place, and avoid surprises. Conduct the audits carefully and with sensitivity. Audit staff must independent from the project. Audit reports need to be used and accessible. Audit supports organizational culture. Project closures should be planned and orderly. Certain core conditions must be in place to support team and individual evaluation. And then conduct individual and team evaluation separate from pay or merit reviews. So in terms of the retrospective process, you can have many sub-retrospective studies depending on the stages of the project. So within the project, you have retrospective gate 1, retrospective gate 2, and then you have end gate. So you will then have many sets of retrospective. So you will have retrospective library, you have retro 1, retro 2, retro 3 until retro end. And these retrospective analysis are evaluations of things done prior to the conduct of the retro analysis. So towards the end of in the project closure, you have to summarize based on the many retrospective, what are the final cumulative retrospective analysis in all. Then that will provide organizational learning culture. Okay, conducting the retrospective analysis includes initiation and staffing, involves people who wants to do the evaluation, and then it requires data collection and analysis and also reporting. So these three elements are important in order to make retrospective analysis working. Okay, the project process review questionnaire. Towards the end of the project, you must conduct the review questionnaire. These are examples of the questionnaires that can be included in the project questionnaire, in the review questionnaire. Were the project objectives and strategic intent of the project clearly and explicitly communicated? Were the objectives and strategy in alignment? Were the stakeholders identified and in the planning? Were the project resources adequate for this project? Were project with the right skill, people with the right skills sets assigned to conduct the project? Were the time estimates reasonable and achievable? Were the risks of the project appropriately identified and assessed before the project started? Were the process and practices appropriate for this type of project? Should the projects or similar size and type use these systems? Why and why not? Did the outside contractors perform as expected? So explain all those. And so the question continues and continues in terms of the budget, in terms of customer and sponsor, and so on. So you can have a look at typical review questionnaires for this closure report. Because this questionnaire need to be evaluated and include in the project closure. For the organizational culture review questionnaire, the previous one was project process. Now you need also to do review questionnaire for the organization, the project organization. Was the organization culture supportive for this type of project? Was the senior management support adequate for that project? Were the people, anything involving the organization, the management of the project itself? Were the people with the right skills assigned to the project? Did the project office help or hinder management of the project? Did the team have access to organizational resources? Was the training for this project adequate? Were lessons learned from the earlier project useful? Why is it useful? Why is it not useful? Where it's learned, and so on. And then did the project have a clear link to organizational objectives? You can explain all those questions as well. And then was the project staff properly reassigned? Human resource helpful or not? And so on. So all these questions are related to the organization of the project, whereas the previous one related to the project process itself. This set of questions is project process. So when you do organizational review questionnaire and the project process questionnaire, you have a complete assessment of overall parts of the project. Then archiving the retrospective reports, analysis, classifying of project in terms of its project type, the size, the staffing, technology level, strategy of or the support received, the issues and problems encountered during the project development, project mission and objectives, procedures and systems used, and organizational resources used. So that is the last part that I think this is the last slide. Yeah, the last slide. from the, so in this last topic of project closure, for my part, is basically most of it are theoretical. So in your project, you do not do all this analysis, right? But I suppose now you are doing project. If you look back at the time plan, okay, your schedule next week, you have a lecture. The following week, you need to submit your progress report for the project before you submit the final report. Okay, so that's all from me. I hope you can follow my lectures. For the exam question, the e-test, all materials are taken from my lectures for my parts. I think other lecturers also, they have same similar lah. Whatever they cover in the lectures, in the lecture notes, it will be asked in the exam. Okay, and so if you have, do you have any questions? Guys, are you with me?
Yes.
So it's very boring class, isn't it?
Sorry, doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor, is there any calculation question during e-test 2 from doctor's part?
Not that I remember. Mostly theoretical lah.
All right, thank you, doctor.
Okay, if you don't have other questions, I shall leave you all. I think the exam is like 1.5 hours or 2 hours at most. You don't have final exam. You only have two tests, and then the assignment, and then the project. The project is big, so make sure you are involved with the project, yeah, because later on you have to submit the video, right? For your, and all lecturers will be assigned to evaluate students' project collectively. So 300 students, we divide among ourselves, so that we look at students' project. But, from previous years, I found interesting output from the project. So